Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the UN warns that troops are needed fast to avert a Rwanda-like genocide in South Sudan. The country's leaders, though, denied there's a risk of that, but has called for yet another ceasefire. Also, Nigeria is going through its biggest ever economic crisis. President Muhammadu Buhari warns of challenges ahead as he announces a budget for 2017. The plan is to go big on spending. And we head to DR Congo, where communities in North Kivu continue to live in fear of militia that operate in the area. Kidnappings and ambushes are on the rise, many within the Virunga National Park. We go on patrol with some of the military convoys trying to combat the threat to locals. But first, the UN's human rights chiefs warned that conflict in South Sudan could descend into all-out genocide, in part prompted by harrowing tales from investigators who've recently visited the world's youngest nation. Yasmin Sukas called for international help in stopping ethnic violence.
South Sudan stands on the brink of an all-out ethnic civil war, which quite frankly can destabilize the entire region.
On the eve of the civil war's third anniversary, the UN called for the immediate deployment of 4,000 peacekeeping soldiers. Fighting is expected to intensify with the start of the dry season, as troops will be able to move around more easily. South Sudan's agreed to the deployment of foreign troops, but the UN's worried forces won't be allowed outside the capital. The brutal conflict started in December 2013 after a split between President Salva Kiir and his former deputy Riek Machar, who are respectively from the Dinka and Nuer ethnic groups. Hate speech from both sides is on the rise. Tens of thousands have been killed and sexual violence is rampant.
70% of women in the camp had been raped since the conflict erupted. The vast majority of them not by unarmed, unknown men, but by police or soldiers. And a staggering 78% of them had been forced to watch someone else being sexually violated.
President Salva Kiir has denied accusations of ethnic cleansing, and South Sudan's UN ambassador said there was no need for the Human Rights Council to hold a special session. However, on Wednesday, Kiir did call for yet another ceasefire.
I call upon those who are still carrying arms to stop destroying their own homes and their own country and join the process of national dialogue.
Kiir also asked for forgiveness for any mistakes he might have committed. Missing from his speech was any mention of his arch-rival, rebel leader Riek Machar, currently in exile in South Africa.
Nigeria is going through the biggest economic crisis of its history. President Muhammadu Buhari warned of the challenges on Wednesday as he announced the budget for 2017, and the plan is to go big on spending. The country, which until earlier this year was the continent's top economy, is in recession for the first time in a quarter of a century. Buhari's pitched a 7.3 trillion naira, or almost 22 billion euro, spending proposal. Our Chika Odua tells us more about what's behind the country's economic troubles.
It just goes down to falling oil prices, because that's really what Nigeria really depends on and has depended on since 1956. But apart from the falling oil prices, we're seeing that insecurity is also a reason. We're seeing a lot of militants in the oil-producing regions actually attack oil installations. So that has driven down Nigeria's oil output by 50%, and that's huge. And so with this recession, we're also seeing a hike in importation taxes. We're seeing record-breaking inflation rates. We're seeing the naira being devalued. Again, I mentioned a dollar shortage, and as well as the import tax. So Nigerians are really, really feeling a pinch that they have not felt ever since the old era of the military regime, when that was handed over in 1999. So this is something very new for Nigerians to experience. They've always been happy to be the biggest economy. Now the story is different, and no one actually knows how long this recession will last.
But President Buhari seems determined to turn it all around. Tell us more about his big spending plans for next year. And bearing in mind that the one for last year didn't quite go as hoped, is this one looking a little bit more promising?
Well, the one last year, that was a record-breaking $30 billion that he asked for, and there was a lot of trouble trying to get that passed. Today, he presented a budget that has been tagged Budget of Recovery and Growth. We're seeing a lot of businesses leaving Nigeria, a lot of international chains and companies. He's hoping to try to get them back by putting in more cash into the economy. Some people say that this is unrealistic because he's hoping that this budget can be passed on the assumption that Nigeria's oil production will improve. Again, a lot of dicey speculation happening here, but I think that perhaps he will be able to get this passed because right now it's a very, very dire, very dry situation in Nigeria, economically speaking.
Chika Odo there for us in Abuja. Now, Gambia's political crisis rumbles on. On Wednesday, the UN warned leader Yahya Jammeh that he could face sanctions if he insists on clinging on to power despite losing the presidential election at the start of the month.
There's still no end in sight for Gambia's political crisis as longtime leader Yahya Jammeh refuses to concede the presidency to Adama Barrow. After security forces took control of the Electoral Commission's headquarters and the polling records it contains in capital Banjul on Tuesday, the United Nations expressed its condemnation.
The Secretary-General reiterates his call for a peaceful, timely and orderly transfer of power in full respect of the will of the Gambian people as expressed in the presidential election. He calls on the Gambian military and security forces to immediately vacate the premises. Those found responsible for acts of violence and human rights violations must be held accountable.
Jammeh's held power in Gambia since taking the reins in a 1994 coup and went back on an initial promise to step down after losing the presidential election on December the 1st. It led to a collection of West African leaders gathering in Banjul on Tuesday under the auspices of regional economic bloc ECOWAS in the forlorn hope they could strike a deal. Gambia's opposition, though, is still hopeful continued international pressure will bear fruit.
We still maintain that President-elect Barrow is the incoming president of the Gambia, who should assume office on the day of the expiration of the term of the incumbent.
That term comes to an end in just over a month, with ECOWAS leaders set to discuss the situation again at a regional summit in Nigeria on Saturday.
While communities in North Kivu continue to live in fear of attack from militia groups operating in the area, kidnappings and ambushes are on the rise, many happening on roads inside Virunga National Park, where military convoys patrol in the hope of combating the threat. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Dozens of vehicles, trucks, buses, and even motorbikes, all under the protection of this military escort on a road that used to be the most dangerous in the country. But today, thanks to the presence of the Congolese army, the region's inhabitants are traveling safely.
Since they put in place the convoy, there are no more problems. But before that, it was terrible. There were massacres, slaughters. People were also kidnapped and taken far into the forest there. But nowadays it's good. It's all good.
A handful of soldiers at the head of the convoy is enough to dissuade armed groups and bandits from attacking. This also benefits the street vendors.
There used to be bandits who attacked us on this road. But now we are free to work without any problems.
But in spite of the convoy, it's never a good idea to stop for too long. Mechanical failures have to be dealt with quickly.
Of course we're scared. When we stop, the soldiers get into position to secure the travelers and the convoy. But we still don't like to stall around here.
It's right behind me that ends the most dangerous section of National Road number 4 in North Kivu. Everybody seems to say that thanks to the security provided by the Congolese army, well, the attacks from rebel groups seem to be way less frequent than they used to be. But these attacks seem now to take place on secondary roads.
Well, finally, Nigeria's Football Federation may have scored an own goal in delaying payment to its champion women's football team. The Super Falcons demonstrated outside Parliament in Abuja on Wednesday. They're demanding bonuses earned by winning the Women's African Cup of Nations for an 8th time. That was earlier this month. Players also met on Wednesday with President Buhari's chief of staff, who promised that their grievances would be resolved this week. The NFF, though, says that it doesn't have the money yet, but that it will be coming. That's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.